My name is Nora Coghlan, and I'm a senior policy manager here at ONE working on cross-organizational policy priorities. So everything from the G8, G20 to the most recent UN MDG summit to the publication of our data. The MDGs are 8 goals that were set. The MDG stands for the Millennium Development Goals. These goals were agreed to back in 2000 when world leaders came together at the United Nations to really get serious about tackling extreme poverty and disease around the world. And the targets ranged, everything from curbing the spread of HIV and malaria to cutting maternal deaths to cutting levels of hunger and getting every child in school by 2015 to be able to complete a full course of primary school. So there's 8 targets, and the idea behind them was to really just build momentum and energy, and in 2015 when the world comes together to see how we've done, to really be able to take stock of progress and really be able to show some results for the efforts over the past 15 years. So the goal of this year's summit in 2010 was, we're 2/3 of the way to 2015. Let's really take a moment, to stop and see what's worked over the past 10 years, and to speed up efforts where, things are lagging, and to really set an action course for the next 5 years so that we can get as close to meeting the goals as possible. The biggest successes of the MDGs have really just been mobilizing, support on these issues. So very high level political support, but also, support the grassroots, both here in the US, where I think people are less familiar with the goals, but also in Africa, where there's, every citizen in the world can say our leaders signed on to these goals, and then hold their leaders to account for achieving them, and for making the necessary policy changes, and making the necessary financial commitments that goes towards achieving them. So in terms of the goals themselves, I'd say that's kind of one of the biggest achievements so far. Of challenges, it's really difficult. You have 8 goals that you're supposed to measure all countries by, so that's just extremely challenging to do. If you look at Sub-Saharan Africa, that's a perfect example. On most of the goals, Sub-Saharan Africa is lagging really far behind the rest of the world. But if you look at a country level, some countries are making really, really great strides. Countries like Ethiopia, Malawi, Mozambique, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ghana, they're making progress on, some of them on 6 out of 8 of the goals. But when you lump them all together as, one region, you kind of miss out on some of that progress. So it's really important to look at a country level and kind of see what efforts are being made in that country, what's working, and just remember that, Africa is, Sub-Saharan Africa is 48 different states, and you're looking at a different context. The way that we like to think about it around here at ONE is, the MDGs are really useful for identifying, especially at the country level, where progress has been made, over the past 10 years, and they'll be really useful in 2015 to look from an even longer time period. But they're all sort of, it kind of, like we say, it's stovepipes how you think about these issues. So, taking the goal of universal primary education, Tanzania is a country that's gotten up to about, I think, 90% net enrollment rate. So 90% of children that are primary school age in Tanzania are now enrolled in primary school. So looking at, purely the MDG, that's a great success. There's all these kids that are now able to be in a classroom and learn from a teacher, but it's important that, we don't just look at the MDG as kind of the end game. There's so many more things that go into helping a person lead a productive life and then enter the economy and, be able to provide for their family. So the MDG is kind of the first step, and it helps us identify progress, but there's so many other things like, how stable is the economy? Is there going to be a job for that person once he leaves primary school? Will he be able to then go on to secondary school? So I think it's important to think of in that lens.